Okay, folks, thank you very much for waiting. Today we have another presentation from Dr. Gregory Giuliani that's towards integrated essential variables for environmental sustainability. That's lots of long words. And we already met Dr. Giuliani during his visit here. He is head of the Digital Earth Unity and Swiss Data Cube project leader at GRID Geneva to the United Nations Environment Program and a senior lecturer at the University of Geneva's Institute for Environmental Sciences. He holds a bachelor's in science in earth science and a master's in PhD in environmental sciences. Dr. Giuliani, the room is yours. Thank you very much for your collaboration, and we're looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to speak again on the work we're doing with our team in Geneva. So now you will see at the end of the presentation the connection with the research we're doing with the Swiss Data Cube. But here, this is also one of the main topic of research of our group. It's related to this concept of essential variables for environmental monitoring. And then I will briefly show you probably in 30 minutes what we have done so far and what are the concepts we're also pushing for. So if we look at the Earth as a system, we can say that basically it's an interconnected system of systems. If we think about the atmosphere, the oceans, the land, the biosphere, all these components, they are interacting in a way or another. So if we want to have a full understanding of the Earth system, we need to also to understand first the subsystems, but then the interconnection of these different subsystems. And more broadly, if we look also at the policy side, you all know that that the United Nations are pushing hard for this concept of the Sustainable Development Goals. So these 17 goals that we hope we will somehow achieve by 2013. So it's not much time left to achieve this objective, but this is really a big mandate that we collectively received at the global scale, so that we can go in a better direction than the path we are on for the moment. So really, from my point of view, the key for sustainable development, and not only my point of view, but more generally, it's really to find this good balance between the exploitation of natural resources, so basically what the Earth is offering to us for our well-being, and the consumption of these resources for socio-economic needs. So really, for the moment, it's going too much in the direction of the socio-economic needs. So we are over-exploiting the natural resources, but we can find a way to be more reasonable in a sense, to be more efficient at least, so that we can re-equilibrate the balance. And obviously, the key for that is to build informed decisions based on evidences, so that we're able, or at least the decision maker are able to answer these basic questions: who, what, where, how, when, and why. And as you all know, certainly data is really the fuel for our own work, so scientific analysis, but also for decision making. And that's an important point that we still to keep in mind, I guess. And you remember already last week I presented this pyramid, but I think that that's an important also concept to embrace. Basically, this data, information, knowledge concept. These data are any type of measurement of signals. Then when you structure this data in map or graph, then it becomes an information. It can be organized, and it's somehow useful. And then when you contextualize that information, then it becomes knowledge. So basically, when we reach that point, we are still looking at the past, but obviously we want to improve the future. So then it's the wisdom stage, and then hopefully the decision. So basically the actions that we need to take, and we hope that we can help our decision makers to take sound decisions based on evidences. So to describe this system, and especially the subsystem, the concept of essential variable has emerged already more than 10 years ago. Really, this concept is to have within a given research community, for example, the climate or the biodiversity, to have a minimal set of variables that can determine the system state, also look at the past and the trend, and then also be able to project in the future, so that we can really predict also what will be in the future and be able to measure the trajectory of the system. So there are really two important aspects. Obviously, one, it's related to the technical aspect, how to do the measures, what is relevant, and then what is relevant also for the more social policy aspect. So to build those and define those essential variables in given communities, it's really crucial to do this kind of co-creation behind being practice relevant knowledge. So it's really domain specific. So each scientific community have different approaches to build and to define their own variables. So it's really a community process that can lead to an agreement to meet the objective for national and global monitoring, reporting, research, and forecasting. So if we look at the Paris Agreement, we still have this challenge to keep the global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. There are specific articles within the Paris Agreement that says that we need to strengthen the scientific knowledge on climate. So they are basically calling for building these essential variables so that we can measure it properly, the climate system, and translate this huge amount of data information that is generated, for example, in the IPCC reports, so that really we can, through customized tools and products, we can bring that whole range of climate data to the end user. So it's really building this discovery, integration, and exploitation of resources, and that's extremely important. So that's why in the climate community was the first community to build their essential variables, so the ECVs, the essential climate variables. So it's supported by one entity, it's the Global Climate Observing System, GCOS, and they define the ECVs as a physical, chemical, or biological variables, or linked, or a set of linked variables that critically contributes to the characterization of Earth's climate. So the rationale behind that, it's obviously to ensure that observational data are required for addressing the need of the various potential end users. GCOS is here to coordinate those observations at the global scale, and they are trying to link the concept of ECVs with the policy side, so basically the UNFCCC and the IPCC. So basically all the IPCC reports, they are tightly bounded with the concept of essential climate variables, and the data that you see in the IPCC report are basically ECVs. So currently we have 54 ECVs, and they are selected based on their relevance, their technical feasibility, and also their economic feasibility. So if you go on the GCOS portal, so you have a full definition, explanation of the concept. You even have matrix that shows you the different ECVs, where you can get the data. So there is a full inventory of these ECVs, and they are depicted like this, and you see that they are really characterizing the different subsystems related to climate. So that's an important point. So these 54 ECVs are describing all these aspects together. You can find also their definitions, and basically, so you see basically they are trying to target the atmosphere, the land, and the ocean, and then you have a full set of variables. And for each variable, if you click on one of them, then you have a definition of what we intend by precipitation, what are the data products available, both at the in situ grid data, or even reanalysis, and even satellite data, so you can directly access those data, and so on. So it's a nice way to interact with this data. So what we have done in the past with one of my students is to look at these ECV's matrix and try to assess their maturity in terms of accessibility of the data, because that's one thing to say that you can download the data, but it's not yet usable. Huh? So you need much more to make it operational and usable by the research community. So we identify through the publication at the end, we prepare many issues, the plenties of data repository that exist, but there are no basic search functionalities or visualization. There are many different data formats, such as the NetCDF, but also ASCII files, CSV, GeoTIFFs, and so on. The access methodologies are also really various, ranging from the FTP side to RESTful services. And obviously also the spatial projection, the coordinate systems are different, the spatial resolution and temporal resolutions are different. So these are many issues that we need operational. So we would build some trying to issues also related to looking at that are available. So that's for the ECV side. Then afterwards, the biodiversity community started to look at this concept. And through the group on Earth observation, so the GeoBonds, so the Biodiversity Observation Network, they also started to build and define their EBVs in that case. So there are now 22 essential biodiversity variables. And for them, the role of an EV, of an essential variable, it's really standing between primary observations, basically observation on the ground or made by remote sensing, and the high-end indicators that we can provide to the decision makers. So they are supported also, they are supporting a convention, so the Convention on Biodiversity, so the CBD, and they are aiming to accommodate the diversity of data providers. And in their community, one specific challenge they have, it's also the changing the demand for indicators. So it's a huge challenge for them, and they are still facing that challenge quite intensively. So if you go on the GeoBond website, then you have a web page talking about the EBVs and what they are and how you can measure them. And if you compare, for example, ECVs to EBVs, we've done that with some colleagues in Zurich, we can say that ECVs, they are more representing singularities, whereas EBVs are more aggregated data coming from observations or inventories. The ECVs are covering more the physical component of the Earth system, whereas the EBVs is mostly concerned by the biotic component. The ECVs are really based on observations, where most of the EBVs, they represent output of models. So that's also a key point. And ECVs, they have also this coordination body that is reviewing the concept and validate potential new ECVs, whereas currently the EBVs has not yet a validation process within the coordination body. So that's also a key difference. And there are many other communities that are popping up and trying to aim to build their essential variables, so in the water community, in the ocean, in the agriculture, and so on. And really, we see a shift towards this idea of being an intermediary level between the observation and the indicator in many of these communities. But there is a big challenge also beside that. So all these communities coming from the research side, so the scientific research side, they are building essential variables for, I would say, the physical aspect of the Earth system. But if we think more broadly about the sustainability concept, then we need also to target the socio-economic side of the durability. And this is a huge challenge, and currently essential socio-economic variables, they are clearly missing. Nobody is taking care of that or trying to define socio-economic variables. So we need not only to characterize its environmental dimension, but also the social aspects and the economical aspect. So we are really pushing out for that that concept now within the community, so that someone can at least launch the idea and try to define a first set of essential socioeconomic variables. And if we succeed in that, then we will be able somehow to track the changes in the three pillars of the sustainability. And we think that this concept is really can bring a significant opportunity, so that it helps to strengthen existing monitoring system. It can help also to provide more efficient observation, and we can seize the fundamental system dimension. Obviously, what is important to keep in mind is that one essential variables can contribute to multiple indicators, and one given observation can be linked to more than one essential variables. So really, through that concept, we can also make the monitoring systems more efficient, so that we're able also to reduce maybe the number of observations required to deliver given indicators. Just one example, land cover is an essential climate variables, but it's also an essential biodiversity variables, and this is also if you look at the other communities, land cover is coming as one of the major essential variables. So really, it's important that one can measure these land cover variables, but then you are contributing to many of these EVs at the end. So we are calling within the geo community, the group on Earth observation, and we are really pushing out for stronger coordination. So we've launched in the past work program a community activity based on the essential variables, together with the University of Barcelona, the CNR in Italy, and the GRC, so that we can really push for this concept through the geo community, and we assess the maturity level of these different existing essential variables concept, and we're really trying to frame also that concept in this kind of DPSIR framework, so the driver pressure state impact response framework, so that we can really have a full picture at the end of the Earth system. And through a research project funded by the European Commission, so it was the GeoEssential project, we've developed a kind of proof of concept, basically, of this approach, trying to look at the different communities that are building essential variables, the different UN bodies that are taking care, or that might be linked with this concept of essential variables. And we've built an SDG indicator knowledge base, so that we can really link these essential variables with the different indicators of the SDG framework. So we've done that really huge work and important work, and trying to show and demonstrate the feasibility. And you see that there are many interlinkages at the end between the communities, and they are really contributing to different SDGs through different data sets and so on. So it's going in all ways, and we are trying to find the best way or the most efficient way to build those indicators based on Earth observation data. And we are also pushing when you start building in new communities your set of essential variables, we think that we need also to consider their essentiality. So really assess that whether this is an essential variable or not, whether it's feasible or not, if it's unambiguous, because at the end, if you look at land cover, this might be ambiguous, because the people will think that, well, that's an ECV, but that's also an EBV, that might be also an essential land variable or ecosystem services variable. So this might be a bit confusing for the end user. And also the evolvability will show or explain that we can accommodate new needs coming, and so having really some system that is really flexible at the end that can accommodate end user needs. And really, we are aiming to go from the left side to the right side, really supporting also the concept of these socio-ecological Earth systems, and having all these EVs defined in all these communities. So that's a big challenge, but at least we started the effort, and I think that's going to be worse. As I said, there are many other communities that are building their own essential variables. You can see some of them on the screen. You see that there are essential variables now for the mountain, for the ecosystem, or ecosystem specifically targeting the ocean, also for the exploitation of mineral resources, and so on and so forth. But really the idea, and through this GeoEssential project, we've shown that that then once we have these essential variables, you can really turn them in information and indicator. So it's really, the general concept is to transform these raster data that we have coming out from satellite data or for in situ monitoring stations, and then we can build some SDG indicators. So in that case, looking, for example, at the Arctic sea ice extent, which is an ECV, if you go on this link, and you can see this beautiful graph that shows the evolution of the Arctic sea ice across different years. But to do such a nice graph, then usually what you have to do, you have to go on an FTP site. You have to browse within different directories so that you can identify the specific data sets you need. You have to download the text file, then transform the text file and import it in Excel or R or whatever software. And then at the end, you will be maybe able to build a nice graph. But really, the idea is to automatize this process, because this can be automatized, and to go out from this really traditional way of doing graphs and be more dynamic. And we have made an experience using the GCOS platform that is brokering all these major data sources. So through the GCOS platform, we accessed through the code we generated at UNEP Grid. Those automatically we've been able to generate those graphs and then feed the UNEP Live platform that now is called the weather, so the World Environment Situation Room. So it's really automatized, and now on a daily basis, those graphs are generated, and you can really track the evolution, for example, of the Arctic sea ice extent live, which is, I think, a key asset. So this is an example of this graph that is live, and you can see it on the internet. And you really, the dark line is the latest. Well, in that case, the slide is a bit outdated, but you can really track the evolution of the Arctic sea ice extent on a daily basis, and you can even compare it with past trends. And then the advantage is that you can put some text, so that you can also advertise or explain, bring some knowledge to the end user. And then even more, you can freely download the data that is really formatted for an easy access and easy use. So we think that's a good way to go with these kind of variables. And we've generated many different graphs looking at this ECV framework, and now they are really live, and we didn't touch them for many months now, or even years, and they are updating themselves on a regular basis. Another example now related to the SDG. So you probably know that the SDG 15.3.1 is aiming to measure the land degradation, which is of high importance at the global scale, because it's putting pressure on more than 3 billion people around the world. So it has a huge impact on food security, for example. So, and there is a full, if you go to the SDG framework, basically you have the full methodology to measure to this indicator. And this indicator, it's really based on mostly based on satellite observation data. So you need vegetation indices so that you are able to measure then the land productivity. You need land cover data sets so that you can assess land cover change, and then you need information on soil organic carbon. So it's somehow you can measure it with satellite data. So it's still it's not completely satellite data, also in situ measurements and so on. But basically, those data, we can use these essential variables concept as we've mapped basically the data that we need with the sub-indicators in the framework together with ECVs and EBVs. So you are able then to measure those sub-indicators, and based on those sub-indicators, then you can aggregate them and get the final SDG indicator, that is the proportion of land being degraded over the total land area. So this is really the general flow, and you see we are going really from the data to the information and knowledge using essential variables. So what we have done, we have implemented such an approach in the GCOS platform, so not the operational one, so the test one, but really on the data side, we are using obviously the GCOS platform itself, but we are accessing also some of the Copernicus databases. We've demonstrated that you can interact with the Google Earth engine, even the Swiss Data Cube for measuring this indicator at the national scale. Then in the middle, we've exposed the model. So this is the Trans-Earth model to generate that specific indicator using the VLAB technology that is developed by our CNR colleague in Italy. And we are able to run the model both on the Amazon cloud and the European Science Cloud, which is an open cloud for scientific research. And then the output of the model, they are consumed in GeoServer, so they are exposed using OGC standards, and then you can use those services to build a dashboard so that end users at the end, and this is what they will show, they will look at. It's a dashboard looking at the land degradation evolution in their specific area. So just to show you the benefit of this approach we've tested. So if you look at the official SDG indicator global database maintained by the United Nations Statistical Division, if you look for the SDG 15.3.1, more or less 15% of the countries have reported the value. So you see there are a lot of gaps in the map. But thanks to our methodology, we've been able to complete the database somehow. So now we have a full picture. We have all the countries around the world because we've been able to run a global model for land degradation. So it was just to show these results are just to show the technical feasibility. It's not yet an official measure of land degradation at the national scale, but then you can engage with different, at national level with different stakeholders so that you can really tune the model so that it fits really the reality on the ground. But one of the big advantage is that you don't have only one value per country, because with that one value, for example, if we look at Brazil, we cannot say where land degradation is occurring or when it has occurred. But using satellite data, then you can disaggregate at the pixel level the values, and then you can look at the map and say, well, maybe this is occurring in that specific part of Brazil, or maybe this is occurring on that specific part of Africa, the main land degradation. So we think that this is also a big advantage of the methodology we are proposing using satellite data. And then at the end, we aggregate all this information in a dashboard. So a single web page where we explain how to measure first the importance of monitoring land degradation, then how we can measure land degradation, and then you have many maps, graphs that are interactive where you can explore the result and really understand the issue. And now the good, the nice incentive using the GCOS platform is that you can also use this VLab platform so that you can come with your own data, basically your own land cover data, land productivity data, soil carbon data, and then you can run remotely the model, and then you will have the outputs, and then you will be able to build your own dashboard within the GEOS platform. So we think that's an approach that is really helping in going in, we think, the right direction, at least from a technical point of view. But what we have done also at the national scale, we try to assess the use of the data cube technology to see how the data cube can support the generation of essential variables at the national scale. So in our case, we tested the Swiss data cube, and we generated these national data repositories, so this Swiss NVO database that I was mentioning last week. Yeah. So we generated the first generation of product related to essential variables. So for example, we will have the snow cover soon, the cloud amount, because we have all the cloudy data also from Landsat and so on. We have generated the NDVI, the fractional cover, the land productivity we're still working on, but the NDWI for the water domain, and so on and so forth. So we are able now to really generate some of these essential variables at the national scale and provide them to the end user. And we've looked at the concept of essential climate, biodiversity, and water variables, and we assessed the potential of the data cube technologies, and we realized that more or less 75% of the essential variables we look at can be produced fully or partially using the data cube technology, which is a huge asset. Yes, that was really a good news at the end. And if we look at the different domains, more specifically, we can say that for the ECVs, approximately 80% of the ECVs can be generated fully or partially using the data cube, 75% for the EBVs, and almost 90% for the water variables. So really, the remote sensing and more broadly, the data cube technology can provide substantial contribution for monitoring essential variables. So just you remember a quick example. So you remember the other day when I showed these Rhone glaciers, so the source of the Rhone River. So this is something we can measure easily with satellite data. The snow cover, you remember also this map we generated where we assessed the loss of snow over Switzerland. This is a key information, and snow cover is an essential climate variable. So now we have the code for generating this data set, and we can share it freely, and so on and so forth. So you remember also this example on drought monitoring using the NDWI. So this is another example for environmental monitoring, and then you can look at the trend, the negative trend in that case, regarding the water availability for vegetation. And same for this small lake that is slowly disappearing. Sorry for that. but I was reaching the end of the presentation. I was just showing a slide where I was mentioning that we have a special issue on essential variables, if you're interested in the concept. And,
I think you could come back to the slide.
Yeah, I can show you the slide. So let me first share the screen. And then this is just this slide where you have the link, but
you were the previous one when we had this part.
This one?
The 51, if I'm not wrong.
I disconnected already during.
No. We saw that one.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's 50
Yeah.
or 51.
So you've seen this one on the lake?
Yeah, I think it was that was the last one.
Okay, so yeah, so so at the end, yeah, basically, I was just mentioning that through this URL, but I will give the presentation to the slides to Carini and Gilberto, so that they will be able to share the presentation. But basically, we have a full special issue in the International Journal of Digital Earth related to the concept of essential variables. So in many communities, but also this high-hand vision and so on. So if you're interested in that concept, you can, yeah, just have a look to this special issue, because I think it's really bringing nice results. And then the last slide basically was just to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for another very nice presentation. Very interesting. So we have time to some questions. Who will be the first? Lubia, please.
Yes, thanks, Greg. It was very interesting. It was a very interesting presentation that covered a lot of things. One question that I have is that you said that ECV are mostly observations, and EBV, essential EBV, are mostly in situ. But in terms of the ECV, how do you do not consider models, for example, prediction models for climate? Because are they considered observations?
No, that's a good question. Huh? Yeah, you're absolutely right. But no, really, if we think about the predictions, well, we can say that, for example, for a given climate model, we can have prediction for snow cover, and snow cover
for
is
example,
climate variables. But usually, really, at least GCOS, how they define the essential variables for supporting the climate, it's really for the monitoring purposes. It's not for the forecasting itself. You can use them for forecasting. You can still say that if you look at the trend of this specific ECV, if I'm taking snow cover, I'm a bit biased because we're working on it. But then here are the potential projection also in the future. So at the end, you can connect basically both. But really, they are more looking at the monitoring side than in the forecasting side for the moment. But this is also something with this broader vision we are trying to give. We are also pushing hard for that concept, because we think that's really interesting to look at the past, because we have to learn a lot from the past. But then we also need really to connect with the forecasting, because at the end, from a decision-making point of view, this is what would be of interest for the decision maker. Basically, they don't care of what we have done in the past.
Yeah, and just a little quick question, then I let other people talk. I was thinking about governance, because this all these indicators, the SDG indicators, are very important for the countries, for policy making, etc. And I'm always curious how to deal with this so important information. And for example, one of your slides in your example, you show that there was a gap in the United States. Then you generated the gap with your model there for one of the indicators, right? But how do you see that the American government will trust that indicator if it's not generated by them? So this is one question that always, because I think that we have this in Brazil, for example, with the deforestation data. Who has the official deforestation data that should be used in the negotiations of the country? So it's not a specific question, it's just a comment that I'm always curious about how we are going to do with this centralization or not centralization, who has the owner of the official data. But It's not exactly a question. It's just a comment that occurred to me.
No, but I look at that's really interesting, the point you're raising, because I think that's something super important. Obviously, every country, they want to have the value they trust and provide the value they think that these are the best for their country to report to the United Nations. So that's one point. And while in the example I was giving, obviously, I'm 100% sure that the US will never trust the value we can bring with this kind of methodology. But then at the end, I think at least we can show two things, is that for the countries that do not have capacities to handle such big data, remote sensing data, and so on, at least we can show that from a technical point of view, this is feasible. So we can help them in a way if they trust us. And then the second aspect is that we can even build a monitoring mechanism at the global scale to look whether we can trust the values that a given country is giving to the United Nations. And I'm saying that because in Switzerland, we have a beautiful example of that thing. So we, in the frame of this work on land degradation, so we used the Swiss data cube and we generated, using Landsat data, the SDG indicator for the government. And then we looked at the official value that the government is reporting to the United Nations. And it's twice lower than the value we found. So at the beginning, we said, well, maybe we did something wrong in the model, so we need to look at the data sources and everything. So we checked carefully if we had made a mistake, basically. And then we realized not. So we say, so what is that? So they are reporting the SDG 15.3.1. And so, well, at one stage we say, well, we need to look at the official definition in Switzerland. And then we realize that the Swiss government is not complying with the official definition of the United Nations. They are only considering, in that case, the soil sealing part. And they are not looking at land productivity at all. They don't care about that. Even the soil carbon content, they don't care about that. What they have done, basically, when the SDG concept was launched back in 2015, they look at the national indicator framework in Switzerland. They were saying, well, maybe this indicator is the closest to the SDG 15.3, so we will report that value. But that's not fair.
No, because no government likes to give bad news. So they always will try to look at the bright side or the best interpretation.
Exactly. And what is worse, really, really bad and really sad, is that I went to the government saying, look, we look at that. We have now implemented a methodology that can support you guys, but here are the results. And they say, well, this is part of the research, we don't care. But basically, obviously, our result, they are not helping them, because currently we are among the good countries regarding land degradation. But if you look at the result we are bringing, then we are downgraded. So we are not that good. So that's here. Really,
but anyways, it's a great work. I think that it's very important to work. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? Pessoal, por favor, fiquem à vontade para fazer perguntas.
Professor, can I ask a question?
Sim, Rogério,
yes.
Please.
Thank you, Gregory, for the nice presentation. It was very good. I have a question about the accessibility. You talked about like dashboard. When you think about this kind of dashboards, you have to allot some resources to keep it running, to display the information, to treat. And my question is, this is an idea of long-term dashboard that aggregates other partners to display all of the information in one place and keep them running for long periods. So how do you manage to deal with this, to aggregate many information and not stop sharing them with others in the long term?
So thank you, Rogerio, for this question, because that's also a really good point, I guess. The sustainability of the solution at the end. And this is something we are tackling in a new research project that we have with the European Space Agency and CNR, because we are with the University of Geneva, we are the main, with USGS in the US, but we are the main resource provider for the GEOS platform in Europe. And we have a big project that is aiming to further develop the GEOS platform towards more end users' needs. And this is exactly what we are working on currently, is a way to have a long-term sustainability through the GEOS platform, so that we enable users to discover not only data or models, but also now in the future, these dashboards, and maintain these dashboards across through the time, because then through the GEOS platform, obviously we are connected with the different data providers, but also the end user communities. So we think that's at least a good setting to work on. And this is something I will not tell you much, because it's going to be announced this year at the Geo Symposium in June, but more interestingly at the end of the year during the Geo Week in South Africa. But we will show the implementation of the dashboard functionality related to exactly what I've shown before, but really entirely in the GEOS platform by the end of this year.
Thank you so much for the answer.
Bom, mais alguma pergunta, pessoal? Aqui no fórum tem o Eduardo Furlan. Gregory, there is a question here in the chat asking
okay.
where we can get more information about your presentation. I think we can share the presentation in
sure.
the
It's already on Karin's computer. Yeah, so we can share that. And yeah, you have my email, so in case you're interested, I can even bring you more links to the work we are doing, to more publications and so on.
Okay, so if there is no other question, let us thank Gregory for the presentation and your time, Gregory, to prepare the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. That's
and see you.
Yeah, see you soon now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good afternoon, everyone.